You know, the biggest reason your home-cooked steak tastes like this rubbery, sort of gray disappointment, it actually has absolutely nothing to do with how expensive the meat is.
Right, yeah.
Or even your stove, honestly.
Yeah.
It's actually because you just aren't using enough paper towels.
I know it sounds totally counterintuitive, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially when you are dealing with premium ingredients. But water on the surface of your meat is like the absolute enemy of flavor.
Yeah, exactly. So welcome to the deep dive, because whether you're, a seasoned home cook who spends weekends making these complex sauces, or like you're someone whose smoke alarm goes off literally every single time you turn on a burner, there is this one culinary mountain that absolutely everyone wants to conquer.
Oh, the perfect steak.
The perfect restaurant-quality pan-seared steak.
Yeah.
I mean, the kind with that impossible crackling dark golden crust on the outside, but then perfectly tender and like pink on the inside.
Yeah, the dream.
Right. And so many of us try, and so many of us end up with just a piece of meat sitting in a puddle of sad juices on the plate.
It's a tragedy, honestly.
It is. But today, we are going to fix that. We're looking at this fantastic article from Lucky Mike, written by Chris G. It's titled Garlic Herb Seared Steak with Cast Iron Confidence.
It's a great piece.
It really is. And it doesn't just give you, like, a list of ingredients. It breaks down the exact mechanics of how to achieve that perfect sear.
Step by step.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive isn't just to, read you a recipe. You can look up a recipe anywhere online.
Right.
We want to extract the underlying science, the specific techniques, and honestly, the mindset required to master this. We want you to be able to bypass all that trial and error and get straight to the perfect crust.
Yeah.
And to do that, I am joined by our resident expert who is here to help us translate, like, the physics and the psychology behind this whole process.
Because a perfect steak really is a masterclass in both physics and patience. I mean, it's literally a science experiment that you get to eat.
A delicious science experiment.
Exactly.
And before we even, talk about pans or temperatures, the source text insists that we actually need to talk about mindset first.
Yeah, this part was so interesting.
The author makes this really cool point that great cooking is a ritual. He talks about his sister-in-law, who he actually calls the Queen of the Sear.
I love that title.
Right. And what really stands out is that she isn't a professional chef. She's just a home cook. But she treats beef like it's sacred.
Yeah, the author describes watching her routine, and it's entirely built on this quiet confidence. Like, whenever she announces she's making steak for family dinner, everyone shows up early and they show up hungry.
Because they know what's coming.
Exactly. She lets the meat rest. She executes this very confident flip. She does this beautiful butter basting with garlic and herbs. And she just looks like she's done it 1,000 times.
Right. And when the author is standing right next to her, with a notebook, trying to capture her big secret, she just smirks and gives him this one quote.
Yeah.
She says, "It's just heat, salt, and patience."
Just heat, salt, and patience.
Now, I have to push back on that a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because to me, that is like a professional quarterback looking at you and saying, look, you just throw the ball.
Ah, I see what you mean.
Like, it sounds incredibly simple, but it completely glosses over the micro skills involved. I mean, a home cook can have all the patience in the world, but if they don't know what they're waiting for, they're just going to burn their dinner.
That's a fair point.
Right. Like, is patience really the magic ingredient here?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the author actually agrees with your pushback.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, he calls her, quote, a classic understatement. Because while she claims it's just patience, what she has really mastered are 3 invisible elements.
Okay.
Timing, care, and flavor development. In the kitchen, patience isn't just like standing around waiting.
Right. It's not just staring at the clock.
Exactly. It's active restraint. It's understanding the exact moment to intervene and the exact moment to step back and just let the chemistry happen.
Let the pan do the work.
Because for a lot of home cooks, the moment a pan starts smoking and sizzling violently, panic just sets in.
Oh, I've been there.
Right. The urge to flip the meat or, to turn down the heat, to constantly check on it, that panic ruins the steak.
Which perfectly sets up why we really need to understand the specific science of the tools.
Yeah.
Because you can have all that active restraint, but if you're trying to execute this ritual in, like, a flimsy, thin-bottomed pan,
you're going to fail.
You are. Patience only pays off if you're using the right equipment to manage the thermal energy.
Which brings us to the great kitchen controversy, pan selection.
Yes, people get very heated about this.
Very heated. And the author is highly opinionated here. He specifically calls out a Lodge 12-inch pre-seasoned skillet.
Okay.
He argues that while people debate this constantly, cast iron is undeniably king.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I want to challenge this absolute superiority of cast iron for a second.
All right, let's hear it.
Because the source itself admits that cast iron is, quote, heavy and slow to respond.
It is.
Look at it this way. Cast iron is basically a massive freight train.
Okay.
It takes a really long time to get up to speed to get hot. And if you make a mistake and need to cool it down quickly but your butter is burning.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Right. Good luck. It takes forever to stop that momentum. Whereas something like carbon steel, which the author does mention as an alternative, that's more like a sports car. It's lighter, it heats up fast, it cools down fast. So why would we actively choose the bulky freight train over the sports car?
Well, we want the freight train specifically because of the physics of what happens when you drop a cold 300-gram piece of meat into a hot pan.
Okay.
That thick, heavy iron has what metallurgists call high thermal mass.
High thermal mass.
Yes. It holds an enormous amount of heat energy. So when that massive cold steak hits the metal, it acts like a thermal sponge.
Oh, I see.
It immediately sucks the heat right out of the pan. If you are using a thin, lightweight pan even, like a high-quality stainless steel one, the temperature of the metal plummets the second the steak touches it.
Because the pan just doesn't have the mass to fight back.
Exactly. It might drop by 100 degrees instantly. And when the pan's temperature drops, the meat just stops searing.
Oh, and that's when the juices start to leak out.
Right. The meat essentially begins steaming in its own liquid. You completely lose the crust, and you get that gray, rubbery finish we talked about.
So the freight train has so much dense mass that it simply ignores the cold steak.
Exactly. The temperature doesn't drop. Or if it does, it's microscopic.
Wow.
The cast iron just powers right through that temperature shock, allowing the sear to continue uninterrupted. And maintaining that steady, intense heat is just non-negotiable if you want to trigger the Maillard reaction.
The Maillard reaction.
Yeah.
We hear that term thrown around on cooking shows all the time, right?
All the time.
It's usually right before a judge takes a bite of something incredibly crispy. But what is actually happening on a molecular level there?
To put it simply, even though steak is muscle, it contains trace amounts of natural sugars and proteins.
Okay.
When you hit those specific proteins and sugars with intense, sustained heat, usually around 140 degrees Celsius or 285 degrees Fahrenheit, they essentially crash into each other.
They crash into each other.
Yeah, they break down and rearrange themselves into hundreds of entirely new, complex flavor compounds.
Wait, so it's not just caramelization?
No. Caramelization is just the browning of pure sugar.
Oh, okay.
The Maillard reaction is what gives browned food, like roasted coffee, toast, and seared steak, that distinctive, savory, rich complexity.
It's the flavor of brown food.
It is literally the taste of browning. But, and this is key, it requires high heat and it requires a dry environment.
Which brings us back to the alternatives to cast iron. The source mentions carbon steel can work if it's perfectly seasoned right.
Yes, because it has decent heat retention, though not quite as much mass as cast iron.
And stainless steel is great for browning, but the source notes it can be really sticky.
Yeah, meaning a beginner might leave half their beautiful crust glued to the bottom of the pan.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But what about non-stick pans? Because I know a lot of people rely on those for literally everything they cook.
Yeah, the author issues an absolute rejection of nonstick pans for this application.
Total rejection.
Total. Nonstick coatings, like Teflon, are simply not designed to handle the extreme high heat required to sear a steak.
Right.
If you push a nonstick pan to the temperatures needed for the Maillard reaction, the chemical coating actually begins to degrade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it can release toxic fumes, which is a massive health hazard, and it will permanently ruin the pan. It is just a complete non-starter.
So the heavy cast iron freight train it is. Now that we understand the mindset and we understand the thermodynamics of our pan, let's look at how we actually engineer the perfect environment for this chemical reaction to take place.
Well, the preparation phase is where the battle is won or lost.
Okay.
First, you take your steaks. The author recommends cuts in the 250 to 300 gram range, like a ribeye, sirloin, or strip loin, and you bring them to room temperature for 30 to 40 minutes before cooking.
And this goes back to the thermal sponge concept, right?
Exactly.
Like if you throw a steak straight from the fridge into the pan, the center is going to remain ice cold while the outside just burns to a crisp.
Yeah.
Letting it come to room temp softens that temperature gradient.
Precisely. You want the internal temperature to rise slowly so the heat doesn't have to work as hard to reach the center later.
Right, and then you season generously with salt and pepper. But there is a crucial, non-negotiable rule here before the seasoning even touches the meat. And this brings us right back to our hook at the beginning of the deep dive.
Yes, the paper towels. You have to pat the steak completely dry.
Completely dry.
The source calls this out aggressively. Moisture is the absolute enemy of a crust.
Let's explain why that is, because I think a lot of people assume the heat of the pan will just instantly cook away any little bit of water.
Right, they think it'll just sizzle off.
Exactly. But it takes a tremendous amount of thermal energy to turn liquid water into steam, what physicists call the latent heat of vaporization.
Yes.
If the surface of your steak is wet, all the heat energy from your perfectly preheated cast iron pan has to go toward boiling and evaporating that surface water first.
It just completely stalls the browning process.
Yeah. Until every single drop of water is evaporated, the surface of the meat cannot rise above the boiling point of water, which is 100 degrees Celsius.
Right. And remember, the Maillard reaction doesn't even begin until 140 degrees Celsius.
So if your steak is wet, you aren't searing it, you are steaming it.
You're steaming it. Dry equals crispy.
Okay, so our steak is bone dry and generously seasoned. We get that cast iron pan smoking hot. Then we add our oil and carefully lay the steak in the pan. And a quick safety note, the source says to lay it away from you, dropping the far edge last. So if any hot oil splashes, it goes toward the back of the stove, not, onto your shirt.
Good tip.
But for the oil, they specify using a neutral oil, like avocado or grapeseed. So what does this all mean in terms of the sequencing? Because we know this recipe features a luxurious butter basting step later on.
Oh, yes.
My instinct, and I think a lot of people's instinct, would be to just drop a massive chunk of butter into the hot pan and throw the steak right on top of it. Why are we starting with avocado oil and holding the butter back?
It really comes down to understanding smoke points. Butter is undeniably delicious, but it is not pure fat.
Right.
It contains milk solids and water. If you drop butter into a cast iron skillet that is heated to searing temperatures, those milk solids will instantly burn and turn into this bitter, acrid black ash.
Ugh, that sounds awful.
It is. It will completely ruin the flavor of the meat. Avocado oil and grapeseed oil, on the other hand, have incredibly high smoke points.
So they can handle the heat.
Exactly. They can take the intense 500-degree heat of that preheated cast iron without breaking down or burning. You use the high heat neutral oil to conduct the heat and build the initial foundation of the crust.
Got it. Okay, so the steak hits the high heat oil. It's sizzling violently. Smoke is starting to billow up.
Yeah.
And this is where we hit the most psychologically difficult part of the entire process. The instruction from the author is simply, don't touch it for 2 to 3 minutes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the sister-in-law's quote about patience really comes into play.
The active restraint.
Exactly. For a home cook, doing absolutely nothing is the hardest active technique to learn. You hear that aggressive sizzle, and every single instinct tells you to intervene.
Oh, yeah. You want to peek underneath it.
You want to lift the edge with your tongs. You want to slide it around the pan to make sure it isn't sticking.
You feel like you should be doing something.
Right.
You're the chef. Standing there doing nothing just feels wrong.
But chemically, if you move the meat, you disrupt the thermal contact between the surface of the steak and the iron.
You break the spell.
You really do. You have to endure those minutes of intense sizzling and just trust the process. You are giving the Maillard reaction the uninterrupted time it needs to weave all those complex flavor compounds together.
I can feel my anxiety spiking just thinking about standing over a smoking pan doing nothing.
It takes nerve.
But okay, we hold the line. After those agonizing few minutes, we flip it. And this is when the magic really happens. We've established our crust on one side. The pan temperature has moderated just slightly from the cold meat, absorbing that initial blast of heat.
Right.
Now we introduce the butter.
The best part.
A tablespoon of unsalted butter, a couple of smashed garlic cloves, and 2 sprigs of fresh thyme or rosemary.
Yes, this is the basting phase. You tilt the heavy pan toward you just slightly, letting all that melting butter pool at the bottom. Then you use a spoon to repeatedly scoop that foaming butter and wash it over the top of the steak for another minute or 2.
The sensory details of this are just incredible. The butter is foaming, which means the water in the butter is actually cooking out.
Right.
And as it foams, the fat is extracting all those aromatic fat-soluble oils out of the crushed garlic and the woody thyme. You're essentially creating a custom high-speed infused oil right there in the pan and washing it continuously over the crust.
It's flavor layering at its absolute finest. You have the intense, savory, slightly bitter crust from the high-heat oil sear,
Yeah.
and now you are bathing it in rich, sweet, herbaceous fat. The basting also cooks the steak gently from the top down while the bottom finishes searing.
At this point, we obviously need to know when to pull it out of the pan. The author provides a temperature guide for the internal state of the meat.
Very important.
For a rare steak, you are looking for an internal temperature of about 48 degrees Celsius. Medium rare is around 54 degrees Celsius, and medium is roughly 60 degrees.
Right.
But once you pull it from the pan, we hit another psychological hurdle. You have to let the steak rest on a cutting board for at least 5 to 7 minutes before slicing into it.
It's so hard.
When you are starving and your kitchen smells like roasted garlic and brown butter, 7 minutes feels like a lifetime.
It really does. But if you give in to the temptation and slice it immediately, you will ruin everything you just worked for.
All the juices.
Yes, all those juices will simply flood out onto your cutting board, leaving the actual meat dry and tough.
I always try to explain the resting period by comparing it to stretching after an intense, heavy workout.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Like when your muscles have just been under incredible strain and stress, they are contracted, tight, and bundled up. If you don't take the time to let them relax, you're undoing the benefits of the work. The steak just went through extreme thermal stress.
That is a highly accurate way to look at the protein structures in the meat, actually. The intense heat of the cast iron literally causes the muscle fibers on the outside of the steak to contract and tighten.
Just clench up.
Exactly. This physical squeezing pushes all the internal moisture toward the cooler center of the steak. If you cut it while those outer fibers are still clenched tight, the pressure just forces the liquid out.
It has nowhere else to go.
Right. Resting does two things. First, it allows the muscle fibers to relax, which lets the juices flow back outward and redistribute evenly throughout the entire cut.
Makes sense.
Second, it accounts for carryover cooking. The residual heat trapped inside the meat will actually continue to cook the steak, raising the internal temperature by another few degrees even while it sits on the board.
So while the meat is resting and doing its little post-workout stretch, we build the rest of the plate. Because a great steak doesn't exist in a vacuum.
No, it needs harmony.
The source provides a couple of specific sides to create a full plate harmony, and they emphasize how the sides interact with the main event.
They focus on oven-roasted sweet potato fries and sautéed green beans.
Though they mention air fryer acorn squash as an alternative too.
True. And what's crucial here isn't the specific measurements, but the thermal management and choreography of the meal.
Exactly. You have the sweet potatoes, which require the dry, enveloping heat of an oven roasting at a hot temperature, like 220 degrees Celsius. The dry heat evaporates the surface moisture of the potato, concentrating the natural sugars until the edges caramelize and turn crispy, while the inside stays soft and starchy.
Right. And then you have the green beans, which are quickly sautéed in a pan for maybe 4 to 5 minutes with some olive oil, minced garlic, and maybe some lemon zest or red pepper flakes for brightness.
The source notes that while sweet potatoes provide complex carbohydrates and green beans provide chlorophyll and crunch, there's a real emotional component to this specific plate.
Definitely.
The sweet potatoes offer a heavy, grounding comfort. The green beans provide a vibrant, acidic crunch that cuts through the rich fat of the butter-basted steak. And the steak itself provides this undeniable primal joy.
Yeah, primal is the right word.
Though, speaking of primal joy, we should probably impartially note the author's highly opinionated attitude toward this meal.
Oh, yes. He doesn't hold back.
No, he doesn't. He makes a joke about vegan options, writing that if you have made it this far into a cast iron steak guide and you are looking for a vegan alternative, you, quote, may have unresolved issues that you should probably learn to address.
He definitely sets a specific tone.
It is an unapologetically carnivorous article. We're just reporting the source material here, but it gives you a clear picture of his mindset.
He views this meal as a traditional, indulgent celebration. He even suggests pairing it with a bold Cabernet Sauvignon or a dark ale, pointing out that the roasted, malty notes of those drinks play beautifully against the charred, savory crust of the meat.
Sounds amazing.
Or, for a non-alcoholic option, a blackberry herbal iced tea to provide some dark fruit acidity.
This raises an important question, though, about how all these elements come together. We've got the thermodynamics of the pan, the chemical engineering of the crust, the choreography of the sides. What is the overarching lesson the author is really trying to teach the home cook here?
This raises an important question indeed, because what the author is really doing is forcing the cook to construct a holistic experience that requires total presence.
Total presence.
Yeah, if we look at the sheer choreography involved managing a high-heat oven for the fries, preheating a heavy piece of metallurgy on the stove, enduring the psychological restraint of not touching the sizzling meat, and then timing the quick sauté of the green beans while the steak rests.
That's a lot to balance.
It completely commands your attention. You cannot scroll on your phone while executing this. It forces you to slow down, to be completely present, and to ground yourself in the physical sensory act of making dinner.
Which is such a powerful takeaway for anyone feeling overwhelmed by the pace of daily life. So let's summarize the ultimate cheat code for you, the listener, so you can go conquer this culinary mountain tonight.
Let's do it.
First, engineer a dry environment. Pat the meat completely dry with paper towels because evaporating water steals the thermal energy needed for browning.
Second, manage the heat mass. Use a heavy cast iron pan that acts as a thermal freight train, refusing to drop in temperature when the cold steak hits it.
Third, practice active restraint. Find the discipline to just leave the steak alone for those crucial minutes so the Maillard reaction can create those hundreds of complex flavor compounds.
And fourth, respect the resting period. Let the protein fibers relax so the juices redistribute, rather than just flooding your cutting board.
Heat, salt, and patience.
Exactly.
When you execute those 4 pillars, you aren't just getting dinner on the table, you are reclaiming a sense of grounding and tactile reality in what is likely a very fast-paced digital life.
It's a ritual.
It is. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Toward the end of the article, the author concedes that despite all the scientific praise for the heavy mass of cast iron, ultimately, quote, the best pan is the one you know how to use well.
That's very true.
We live in a modern era filled with incredible kitchen technology. We have precision smart ovens, Bluetooth meat thermometers that send graphs of internal temperatures directly to our phones, and AI recipe generators that can perfectly calculate cooking times down to the exact second.
Yeah, we have all the data.
But is the true secret to culinary greatness actually just tactile repetition? Does relying too much on perfect data and smart gadgets rob us of the physical intuition, the feeling of the radiant heat on your hand, the specific auditory crackle of the sizzle-changing pitch as the crust forms, the smell of the foaming butter that actually elevates cooking from a science experiment into an art form?
That is a wonderful question to ponder while your steak is resting.
So the next time that smoke alarm threatens to go off, don't panic. You have the knowledge now. Embrace the freight train of cast iron. Trust the chemistry. Don't forget your paper towels and go claim your perfect crust.
Happy searing.
Until next time, keep diving deep.